Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Eat, Pray, Love, written by Elizabeth Gilbert, narrated by Joanne Harrison. Again, thank you for all my supporters and subscribers and likes. I really appreciate it. 78. Here in Katut Liar's life story, pretty much as he tells it. It is 9 generations that this family is a medicine man. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all of them is a medicine man. They all want me to be a medicine man because I see I have light. They see I have beautiful and I have intelligence, but I do not want to be medicine man. Too much study, too much information. And I don't believe in medicine man. I want to be a painter. I want to be an artist. I have good talent with this. When I was still a young man, I met an American man, very rich, maybe even New York City person like you. He liked my painting. He wants to buy big painting from me and maybe 1 meter big for a lot of money, enough money to be rich. So I started painting this picture for him. Every day I painting. Even in night I painting. In this day, long time ago, no electric light bulb like today, so I have lamp, oil lamp, you understand? Pump lamp. Have to pump it to make oil come. And I always make painting every night with oil lamp. One night, oil lamp is dark, so I'm pumping, and it explode. Makes my arm on fire. I go to hospital for 1 month with burned arm. It make infection. Infection goes all the way to my heart. The doctor says I must go to Singapore for cut my arm off for amputation. This is not my cup of tea, but doctor says I must go to Singapore, have operation to cut arm off. I tell doctor, first I go home to my village. That night in my village I got a dream. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, all they come in my dream to my house together and tell me how to heal my burned arm. They tell me to make juice from saffron and sandalwood, to put juice on burn, then make powder from saffron and sandalwood, rub powder on burn. Then they tell me I must do this, then I not lose my arm. So real, this dream, like they in house with me, all of us together. I wake up, I don't know what to do because some dreams are just joking, you understand. But I make back to my home and I put this saffron and sandalwood juice on my arm, and then I put saffron and sandalwood powder on my arm. My arm very infected, very ache, made big, very swell. But after juice and powder become very cool, became very cold, start to feel better. 10 days, my arm is good, all heal. For that I start to believe. Now I have dream again with father, grandfather, great-grandfather. They tell me now I must be medicine man. My soul, I must give it to God. For to do this I make fast for 6 days, understand? No water, no food, no drink, no breakfast. Not easy. I so thirsty from fast. I go to rice fields in morning before sun. I sit in rice fields with mouth open and take water from air. How you call this? The water in air in rice field in morning? Dew. Yes, dew. Only this dew I eat for 6 days. No other food. Only this dew. On number 5 day I get unconscious. I see all yellow colour everywhere. No, not yellow colour, gold. I see gold colour everywhere, even inside me. Very happy. I understand now. This gold colour is God. Also inside me. Same thing that is God is same thing inside me. Same. So now I must be medicine man. Now I have to learn medical books from great-grandfather. These books not made on paper, made on palm leaves, called Luntas. This is Balinese medical encyclopedia. I must learn all different plants on Bali. Not easy. One by one I learn everything. I learn to take care of people with many problems. One problem is when someone is sick from physical. I help this physical sick with herbs. Other problem is when family is sick, when family is always fighting. I help with harmony, with special magic drawing. Also with talking for helping. Put magic drawing in house, no more fighting. Sometimes people sick in love, not find right match. For Balinese and Western too, always a lot of trouble with love. Difficult to find right match. I fix love problem with mantra and with magic drawing, bring love to you. Also, I learned black magic to help people if bad black magic spell on them. My magic drawing you put in your house, bring you good energy. I still like to be artist. I like make painting when I have time, sell to gallery. My painting always the same painting when Bali was paradise, maybe 1,000 years ago. Painting of jungle, animals, women with, what is word, breast. Women with breast. Difficult for me to find time to make painting because of medicine man, but I must be medicine man. It is my profession. It is my hobby. Must help people or God is angry with me. Must deliver baby sometimes, do ceremony for dead man or to do ceremony for tooth filing or wedding. Sometimes I wake up 3 in morning making painting by electric light bulb. Only time I can make painting for me. I like alone this time of day, good for making painting. I do true magic, not joking. Always I tell true. Even in bad news, I must do good character always in my life, or I will be in hell. I speak Balinese, Indonesian, and a little Japanese, little bit of English, little bit of Dutch. During war, many Japanese here, not so bad for me. I read palms for Japanese, make friendly. Before war, many Dutch here, now many Western here, all speak English. My Dutch is how you say, what word you teach me yesterday. Rusty. Yes, rusty. My Dutch rusty, ha. I am 4th caste in Bali, in very low caste like farmer, but I see many people in 1st caste not so intelligent as me. My name is Ketut Leah. Leah is name my grandfather gave me when I was little boy. It means bright light. This is me. 79. I am so free here in Bali, it's almost ridiculous. The only thing I have to do every day is visit Katutlea for a few hours in the afternoon, which is far too short of a chore. The rest of the day gets taken care of in various nonchalant manners. I meditate for an hour every morning using the yogic techniques my guru taught me, and then I meditate for an hour every evening with the practices Katut has taught me. Sit still and smile. In between, I walk around and ride my bike and sometimes talk to people and I eat lunch. I found a quiet little London library in this town, got myself a library card, and now great luscious portions of my life are spent reading in the garden after the intensity of life in the ashram. And even after the decadent buzziness of zooming all over Italy and eating everything in sight, this is such a new and radically peaceful episode of my life. I have so much free time, you could measure it in metric tons. Whenever I leave the hotel, Mario and the other staff members at the front desk ask me where I am going, and every time I return, they ask me where I've been. I can almost imagine that they keep tiny maps in the desk drawer of all their loved ones, with markings indicating where everyone is at every given moment, just to make sure the entire beehive is accounted for at all times. In the evenings, I spin my bicycle high up into the hills and across the acres of the rice terraces north of Ubud. With views so splendid and green, I can see the pink clouds reflecting the standing water of the rice paddies, like there are two skies, one up in heaven for the gods and one down here in the muddy wet for us mortals. The other day I rode up the heron sanctuary with the grudging welcome sign. Okay, you can see herons here. But there were no herons that day, just ducks. So I watched the ducks for a while, then I rode into the next village. Along the way, I passed men and women and children and chickens and dogs, who all in their own way were busy working, but none so busy that they couldn't stop to greet me. A few nights ago, on the top of one lovely rise of forest, I saw a sign, Artist House for Rent with Kitchen, because the universe is generous. 3 days later, I am living there. Mario helped me move in, and all his friends at the hotel gave me a tearful farewell. My new house is on a quiet road surrounded in all directions by rice fields. It's a little cottage-like place inside ivy-covered walls. It's owned by an English woman, but she is in London for the summer, so I slide into her home, replacing her in this miraculous space. There is a bright red kitchen here, a pond full of goldfish, a marble terrace, an outdoor shower tiled in shiny mosaics. While I shampoo, I can watch the herons nesting in the palm trees. Little secret paths lead through a truly enchanting garden. The place comes with a gardener, so all I have to do is look at the flowers. I don't know what any of these extraordinary equatorial flowers are called, so I make up names for them. And why not? It's my Eden, is it not? So I've given all the plants around here new monikers: daffodil tree, cabbage palm, pom dress, weed, spiral show-off, tiptoe blossom, melancholy vine, and spectacular pink orchid. I have christened baby's first handshake. The unnecessary and the superfluous volume of pure beauty around here is not to be believed. I can pick up papayas and bananas right off trees outside my bedroom window. There's a cat who lives here who is enormously affectionate to me for the half an hour every day before I feed him, then moans crazily for the rest of the time like he's having Vietnam War flashbacks. Oddly, I don't mind this. I don't mind anything these days. I can't imagine or remember discontent. The sound universe is also spectacular around here. In the evenings there are cricket orchestras with frogs providing the bass line. In the dead of night the dogs howl about how misunderstood they are. Before dawn the roosters for miles around announce how freaking cool it is to be a rooster. "We are roosters," they holler. "We are the only ones to get to be roosters." Every morning around sunrise there is tropical birdsong competition, and it's always a 10-way tie for championship. When the sun comes out of the place, quiets down and the butterflies get to work. The whole house is covered with vines. I feel like any day this will disappear into foliage completely, and I will disappear with it and just become a jungle flower myself. The rent is less than what I used to pay in New York City for a taxi fare every month. The word paradise, by the way, which comes from the Persian, means literally a walled garden. 80. That said, I must be honest here and relay that it takes me only 3 afternoons of research in the local library to realise that all my original ideas about Balinese paradise were a bit misguided. I'd been telling people since I first visited Bali 2 years ago that this small island is the world's only true utopia, a place that has known only peace and harmony and balance for all time. A perfect Eden with no history of violence or bloodshed ever. I'm not sure where I got this grand idea, but I endorsed it with full confidence. Even the policemen wear flowers in their hair, I would say, as if that proved it. In reality, though, it turns out that Bali has had exactly as bloody and violent and oppressive a history as anywhere else on this earth where beings have ever lived. When the Javanese kings first immigrated here in the 16th century, they essentially established a feudal colony with a strict caste system which, like all self-respecting caste systems, tended not to trouble itself with consideration for those at the bottom. The economy of early Bali was fuelled by a lucrative slave trade, which not only preceded European participation in the international slave traffic by several centuries, but also outlived Europe's trafficking of human lives for a good long while. Internally, this island was constantly at war as rival kings staged attacks, complete with mass rape and murder, on their neighbours until the late 19th century. The Balinese had a reputation amongst traders and sailors for being vicious fighters. The word amok is in running amok is a Balinese word describing a battle technique of suddenly going insanely wild against one's enemies in suicidal and bloody hand-to-hand combat. The Europeans were frankly terrified by this practice. With a well-disciplined army of 30,000, the Balinese defeated their Dutch invaders in 1848, again in 1849, and once more for good measure in 1850. They collapsed under Dutch rule only when the rival kings of Bali broke ranks and betrayed each other in bids for power, aligning with the enemy for the promise of good business deals later. So to gauze this island's history today in a dream of paradise is a bit insulting to reality. It's not like these people have spent the last millennium just sitting around smiling and singing happy songs. But in the 1920s and 1930s, when the elite class of Western travellers discovered Bali and the bloodiness was ignored as the newcomers agreed that this was truly the island of gods, where everyone is an artist and where humanity lives in an unspoiled state of bliss. It's been a lingering idea, this dream. Most visitors to Bali, myself on the first trip included, still endorse it. I was furious at God that I was not born Balinese, said the German photographer George Krauser after visiting Bali in the 1930s, lured by reports of other outworldly beauty and serenity. Some really A-list tourists started visiting the island. Artists like Walter Spies, writers like Noel Coward, dancers like Claire Holt, actors like Charlie Chaplin, scholars like Margaret Mead, who, despite all the naked breaths wisely called Balinese, civilised on what is truly was a society as prim as Victorian England. Not an ounce of free libido in the whole country. The party ended in the 1940s when the world went to war. The Japanese invaded Indonesia, and the blissful expatriates in Balinese gardens with their pretty houseboys were forced to flee. In the struggle for Indonesian independence, which followed the war, Bali became just as divided and violent as the rest of the archetypal archipelago. By the 1950s, reports a study called Bali Paradise invented. If a Westerner dared visit Bali at all, he might have been wise to sleep with a gun under his pillow. In the 1960s, the struggle for power turned all of Indonesia into a battlefield between the nationalists and communists. After a coup attempt in Jakarta in 1965, nationalist soldiers were sent to Bali with the names of every suspected communist on the island. Over the course of about a week, aided by the local police and village authorities, at every step the nationalist forces steadily murdered their way through every township. Something like 10,000 corpses choked the beautiful rivers of Bali when the killing spree was over. The revival of the dream of the fabled Eden came late in the 1960s when the Indonesian government decided to reinvent Bali for the international tourist market as the island of the gods. Launching a massively successful marketing campaign, the tourists who were lured back to Bali were a fairly high-minded crowd. This was not Fort Lauderdale after all, and their attention was guided towards the artistic and religious beauty inherent in the Balinese culture. Darker elements of history were overlooked and have remained overlooked since. Reading about this during my afternoons in the local library leaves me somewhat confused. Wait, why did I come to Bali again? To search for balance between worldly pleasure and spiritual devotion, right? Is this indeed the right setting for such a search? Do the Balinese truly inhabit that peaceful balance more than anyone else in the world? I mean, they look balanced, what with all the dancing and praying and feasting and beauty and smiling, but I don't know what's actually going on under there. The policemen really do wear flowers tucked behind their ears, but there's corruption all over the place in Bali, just like in the rest of Indonesia. As I found out firsthand the other day when I passed an uninformed man a few $100 of under-the-table cash to illegally extend my visa so I could stay in Bali for 4 months after all. The Balinese quite literally live off their image of being the world's most peaceful and devotional and artistical expressive people, but how much of that is intrinsic and how much of that is economically calculated? And how much can an outsider like me ever learn of the hidden stresses that might loiter behind those shining faces? It's the same here as anywhere else. You look at the picture too closely and the firm lines start to melt away and the indistinct mass of blurry brushstrokes and blended pixels. For now, I can say for certain is that I love the house I have rented and that the people in Bali have been gracious without exception. I find their art and ceremonies to be beautiful and restorative. They seem to think so as well. That's my empirical experience of a place that's probably far more complex than I will ever understand. But whatever the Balinese need to do in order to hold their own balance and make a living is entirely up to them. What I'm here to do is work on my own equilibrium, and that still feels, at least for now, like a nourishing climate in which to do that. 81. I don't know how old my medicine man is. I've asked him, but he's not certain. I seem to remember that I was here 2 years ago, the translator saying he was about 80, but Mario asked him the other day how old he was, and Katut said maybe 65, not sure. When I asked him what year he was born, he said he didn't remember being born. I know he was an adult when the Japanese were occupying Bali during World War II, which could make him about 80 now. But when he told me the story of the burning arm as a young man, and I asked him what year that had happened, he said, I don't know, maybe 1920. So if he was around 20 years old in 1920, that would make him what now? Maybe 105? So we can estimate that he's somewhere between 60 and 105 years old. I've also noticed that the estimation of his age changes by the day based on how he feels. When he's really tired, he'll say maybe 85 today. But when he's feeling more upbeat, he'll say, I think I'm 60 today. Perhaps this is as good a way of estimating an age as any. How old do you feel? What else matters really? Still, I'm always trying to figure it out. One afternoon I got really simple and just said, Katut, when is your birthday? Thursday, he said. This Thursday? No, not this Thursday. A Thursday. This is a good start, but there is no more information than that. A Thursday in what month, in what year, no telling. Anyway, the day of the week that you were born is more important in Bali than the year, which is why even though Katet doesn't know how old he is, he was able to tell me that the patron god of children born on Thursdays is Shiva the Destroyer, and that the day has two guiding animal spirits, the lion and the tiger. The official tree of children born on a Thursday is the banyan. The official bird is the peacock. A person born on a Thursday is always talking first, interrupting everyone else, can be a little aggressive, tends to be handsome, a playboy or a playgirl in Katut's words, but has the decent overall character with an excellent memory and desire to help other people. When his Balinese patients come to Katut with serious ill health or economic or relationship problems, he always asks on which day of the week they were born in order to conduct the correct prayers and medicines to help them. Because sometimes Katut says people are sick in the birthday and they need a little astrological adjustment in order to set them into balance again. A local family brought their youngest son to see Katut the other day. The child was maybe 4 years old. I asked what the problem was, and Katut translated that the family was concerned about problems with very aggressive this boy. This boy not take orders, bad behave, not pay attention, everybody in house tired from boy, also sometimes this boy is too dizzy. Katut asked the parents if he could hold the child for a moment. They put their son in Katut's lap, and the boy leaned back against the old medicine man's chest, relaxed and unafraid. Katut held him tenderly, placed a palm on the child's forehead, shut his eyes, then he placed a palm on the boy's belly and shut his eyes again. He was smiling and speaking gently to the child the whole time. The examination was quickly over. Katut handed the boy back to his parents, and the people left soon with a prescription and some holy water. Katut told me he'd asked the parents about the circumstances of the boy's birth and had discovered the child had been born under a bad star on a Saturday, a day of birth which contains elements of potentially bad spirits, like a crow spirit, an owl spirit, a rooster spirit. This what makes the child a fighter, and puppet spirit, this is what causing his dizziness. But it was not all bad news. Being born on a Saturday, the boy's body also contained rainbow spirit and butterfly spirit, and these could be strengthened. A series of offerings would be made, and the child would be brought into balance once more. Why did you hold your hand on the boy's forehead and stomach? I asked. Were you checking for fever? I was check his brain, Katut said, to see if he had evil spirits in mind. What kind of evil spirits? Liss, he said, I am Balinese. I believe from black magic. I believe evil spirits come out of rivers and hurt people. Did the boy have evil spirits? No, he only sick on his birthday. His family will make sacrifice. This will be okay. And you, Liss, you are practice Balinese meditation every night. Keep mind and heart clean. Every night, I promised. You learn to smile even in your liver. Even in my liver, Katot. Big smile in my liver. Good. This smile will make you beautiful woman. This will give you power of to be very pretty. You can use this power, pretty power, and get what you want in life. Pretty power, I repeat the phrase, loving it. Like a meditation Barbie, I want pretty power. You are still practice Indian meditation too? Every morning? Good. Don't forget your yoga, beneficial to you, good for you to keep practice both ways meditation, Indian and Balinese. Both different, but good in equal way, same. I think about religion, most of it same. Not everybody thinks so, Katot. Some people like to argue about God. Not necessary, he said. I have good idea for you to meet some person from different religion and he want to make argument about God. My idea is you listen to everything this man say about God, never argue about God with him. Best thing to say is, I agree with you, then go home, pray what you want. This is my idea for people to have peace about religion. Katot keeps his chin lifted all the time. I've noticed his head held a little bit back, sort of quizzical and elegant at the same time. Like a curious old king, he looks at the whole world from above his nose. His skin is lustrous golden brown. He's almost totally bald, but what makes up for it with exceptionally long and feathery eyebrows, which look eager to take flight. Except for his missing teeth and his burn-scarred right arm, he seems in perfect health. He told me that he was a dancer in his youth for the temple ceremonies and that he was beautiful back then. I believe it. He only eats one meal a day, typical simple Balinese dish of mixed rice with either duck or fish. He likes to drink 1 cup of coffee with sugar every day, mostly just to celebrate the fact that he can afford coffee and sugar. You too could easily live to 105 on this diet. He keeps his body strong, he says, by meditating every night before sleep and by pulling the healthy energy of the universe into his core. He says that human body is made of nothing more than less than 5 elements of all creation: water, apa, fire, tejo, wind, bayu, sky, aska, and earth, prithvi. And all you have to do is concentrate on this reality during meditation and you will receive energy from all these sources and you will stay strong. Demonstrating this occasionally very accurate ear for English idiom, he say. The microism become the macroism, you microism and will become same as universe, the macroism. He was so busy today, crowded with Balinese patients who were stacked up all over the courtyard like cargo crates, all of them with babies or offerings in their laps. He had farmers and businessmen there, fathers and grandmothers. There were parents with babies who weren't keeping food down, and all men haunted by black magic curses. There were young men tossed by aggression and lust, and young women looking for love matches while suffering children complained about their rashes. Everyone out of balance, everyone needing equilibrium to be restored. The mood of the courtyard of Katot's home is always one of total patience, though. Sometimes people must wait up for 3 hours before Katot gets a chance to take care of them. But they never so much as tap their feet or roll their eyes in exasperation. Extraordinary, too, is the way that the children wait, leaning up against their beautiful mothers, playing with their own fingers to pass the time. I am always amused later when it turns out that these same tranquil children have been brought over to see Katot because their mother and father have decided that the child is too naughty and needs a cure. That little girl, that 3-year-old who was sitting silently in the hot sun for 4 straight hours without complaint or snack or toy. She's naughty? I wish I could say. People you want to see naughty, I'll take you to America, show you some kids that'll have believing in Ritalin. show you some kids that'll have you believing in Ritalin. But there's just a different standard here for good behaviour in children. Ketut treats all patients obligingly one after another, seemingly unconcerned by the passage of time, giving all exactly the attention they need, regardless of who was waiting to be seen next. He was so busy he didn't even get one meal at lunchtime, but he stayed glued to his porch, obliged his respect for God and his ancestors to sit there for hours on end, healing everyone. By evening his eyes looked tired as the eyes of a Civil War field surgeon. His last patient of the day had been a deeply troubled middle-aged Balinese man complaining he had not slept well in weeks. He was being haunted, he said, by a nightmare of a drowning in two rivers at the same time. Until this evening I wasn't sure what my role in Kututle's life. Every day I'd been asking him if he really sure he wants me around, and he keeps insisting that I must come and spend time with him. I felt guilty taking up so much of his day, but he always seems disappointed when I leave at the end of the afternoon. I'm not teaching him any English, not really. Whatever English he already learned, however many decades ago, has been cemented into his mind, and by now there isn't much space for correction or a new vocabulary. It's all I can do to get him to say nice to see you when I arrive instead of nice to meet you. Tonight, when his last patient had left, Ketut was exhausted, looking ancient from all the weariness of service. I asked him whether I should not go now and let him have some privacy, and he replied, "I always have time for you." Then he asked me to tell him some stories about India, about America, about Italy, about my family. That's when I realised I am not Kututle's English teacher, nor am I exactly his theological student, but I am the merest and simplest of pleasures for this old medicine man. I am his company. I am somebody he can talk to because he enjoys hearing about the world and hasn't had much chance to see it. In our hours together on his porch, Ketut asked me questions about everything, from how much cars cost in Mexico to what causes AIDS. I did my best with both topics, but I believe there are experts who could answer with more substance. Ketut has never been off the island of Bali in his life. He spent very little time actually off his porch. He once went on a pilgrimage to Mount Ayung, the biggest and most spiritually important volcano in Bali, but he said the energy was so powerful there he couldn't scarcely meditate for fear he might be consumed by sacred fire. He goes to the temples for the big important ceremonies, and he is invited to his neighbours' homes to perform weddings and coming-of-age rituals, but most of the time he can be found right here, cross-legged upon his bamboo mat, surrounded by his great-grandfather's palm leaf medical encyclopedias, taking care of people, mollifying demons, and occasionally treating himself to a cup of coffee with sugar. "I had a dream from you last night," he told me. "I had to dream that you are riding your bicycle anywhere." Because he paused, I suggested a grammatical correction. "Do you mean I had a dream that I was riding my bicycle everywhere?" "Yes. I dreamed last night you were riding your bicycle anywhere and everywhere. You are so happy in my dream. All over the world you are riding your bicycle and I following you." Maybe he wishes he could. "Maybe you could come see me someday in America, Ketut," I said. "Can't this." He shook his head, cheerfully resigned to his destiny. "Don't have enough teeth to travel on airplane." 82. As for Ketut's wife, it takes me a while to align myself with her. Naomo, as he calls her, is a big and plump, with stiff hip limp and teeth stained red by chewing on betel nut tobacco. Her toes are painfully crooked from arthritis. She has a shrewd eye. She was scary to me from the first sight. She's got that fierce old lady vibe you see sometimes in Italian widows and righteous black churchgoers, going mamas. She looks like she'd whoop your hide for the slightest of misdemeanours. She was blatantly suspicious of me at first. Who is this flamingo trapezing through my house every day? She would stare at me from inside the sooty shadows of her kitchen, unconvinced as to my right to exist. I would smile at her and she'd just keep staring, deciding whether she should chase me out with a broomstick or not. But then something changed. It was after the whole photocopy incident. Katulia has all these piles of old lined notebooks and ledgers filled with tiny little handwriting of ancient Balinese Sanskrit mysteries about healing. He copied these notes into notebooks way back in the 1940s and 50s, sometime after his grandfather had died. So he would have all the medical information recorded. This stuff is beyond invaluable. There are volumes of data about rare trees and leaves and plants and all their medical properties. He's got some 60 pages of diagrams about palm reading and more notebooks full of astrological data, mantras, spells and cures. The only thing is these notebooks had been through decades of mildew and mice and they were shredded almost into bits, yellow and crumbling and even musty. They looked like disintegrating piles of autumn leaves. Every time he turns a page, he rips the page. "Kutut," I said to him last week, holding one of his battered notebooks, "I'm not a doctor like you are, but I think this book is dying." He laughed. "You think is dying?" "Sir," I said gravely, "here is my professional opinion. If this book does not get some help soon, it will be dead within the next 6 months." Then I asked if I could take the notebook into town with me and photocopy it before it died. I had to explain what photocopying was and promised that I would only keep the notebook for 24 hours and that I would do it no harm. Finally, he agreed to let me take it off the porch property with my most passionate assurances that I would be careful with his grandfather's wisdom. I rode into town to the shop with the internet computers and photocopiers and I gingerly duplicated every page. Then I had a new, clean photocopies bound in nice plastic folder. I brought the old and the new versions of the book back the next day before noon. Ketut was astonished and delighted, so happy because he had that notebook, he said, for 50 years, which might literally mean 50 years, or it might just mean a really long time. I asked if I could copy the rest of his notebooks to keep that information safe too. He held out another limp, broken, shredded, grasping document filled with Balinese Sanskrit and complicated sketches. "Another patient," he said. "Let me heal it," I replied. This was another grand success. By the end of the week, I'd photocopied several of the old manuscripts. Every day, Kutut called his wife over and showed her the new copies, and he was overjoyed. Her facial expressions didn't change at all, but she studied the evidence thoroughly. And the next Monday, when I came to visit, Naomo brought me a hot coffee, served me jelly in a jar. I watched her carry the drink across the courtyard on a china saucer, limping slowly on the long journey from her kitchen to Kutut's porch. I assumed the coffee was intended for Kutut, but no, he'd already had his coffee. This was for me. She prepared it for me. I tried to thank her, but she looked annoyed at me and at my thanks. Kind of swatted me away with her swats away the rooster. It kind of swatted me away the way she swats away a rooster who always tries to stand on the outdoor kitchen table when she was preparing lunch. But the next day she brought me a glass of coffee and a bowl of sugar on the side, and the next day was a glass of coffee and a bowl of sugar and a cold boiled potato. Every day that week she added a new treat. This was starting to feel like that childhood car trip. Alphabet memory game. I'm going to Grandma's house, I'm bringing an apple. I'm going to Grandma's house, I'm bringing an apple and a balloon. I'm going to Grandma's house, I'm bringing an apple, a balloon and a cup of coffee in a jelly glass and a bowl of sugar and a cold potato. Then yesterday I was standing in the courtyard saying my goodbyes to Kutut and Naomi came shuffling past with her broom, sweeping and pretending not to be paying attention to everything that happens in her empire. I had my hands clasped behind my back, and, as if I was standing there, she came up behind me and took one of my hands in hers. She fumbled through my hands like she was trying to untumble the combination lock, and she found my index finger. Then she wrapped her whole big hard fist around that finger and gave me this deep, long squeeze. I could feel her love pulsing through the power grip, right up into my arm, all the way down to my guts. Then she dropped my hand and limped away, arthritically saying not a single word, continuing her sweeping as though nothing had happened, while I stood there quietly drowning in 2 rivers of happiness at the same time. 83. I have a new friend. His name is Yudi, which is pronounced Uday. He's Indonesian, originally from Java. I got to know him because he rented my house to me. He's working for the English woman who owns the place, looking after her property while she's away in London for the summer. Uday is 27 years old and a stocky build and talks like a Southern California surfer. He calls me man and dude all the time. He's got a smile that could stop crime, and he's got a long, complicated life story for somebody who's so young. He was born in Jakarta. His mother was a housewife, his father an Indonesian fan of Elvis who owned a small air conditioning and refrigeration business. The family was Christian, an oddity in this part of the world, and Uday tells me entertaining stories about being mocked by the neighbourhood Muslim kids for such shortcomings. You eat pork and you love Jesus. Uday wasn't bothered by the teasing. Uday by nature isn't bothered by much. His mum, however, didn't like him hanging around with Muslim kids, mostly on account of the fact that they were always barefoot, which Uday also liked to be, but she thought it was unhygienic, so she gave her son a choice. He could either wear shoes and play outside, or he could stay barefoot and remains indoors. Uday doesn't like wearing shoes, so he spent a big chunk of his childhood and adolescence in his bedroom, and that's where he learned how to play the guitar barefoot. This guy has musical ear like maybe no one I've ever met. He's beautiful with a guitar, never had lessons, but understands melody and harmony, like they were kid sisters he grew up with. He makes these east-west blends of music that combine classical Indonesian lullabies with reggae groove and early days Stevie Wonder funk. It's hard to explain, but he should be famous. I never knew anybody who heard Uday's music who didn't think he should be famous. He's what he always wanted to do most of all, live in America and work in show business. The world shared dream. So when Uday was still a Javanese teenager, he somehow talked himself into a job, speaking hardly any English yet, on a Carnival Cruise Line ship, thereby casting himself out of his narrow Jakarta environment and into blue world. The job Uday got on the cruise ship was one of the most insane jobs for an industrious immigrants living below decks, working 12 hours a day, 1 day off a month, cleaning. His fellow workers were Filipinos and Indonesians. The Indonesians and Filipinos slept and ate separate quarters of the boat, never mingling. Muslims v Christians, don't you know? And Uday, in a typical fashion, befriended everybody and became a kind of a missionary between the two groups of Asian laboratories. He saw more similarities than differences before these maids and custodies and dishwashers, all of whom were working bottomless hours in order to send $100 or so a month back to their families at home. The first time the cruise ship sailed into New York Harbour, Uday stayed up all night, perched on the highest deck, watching the city skyline appear over the horizon. Heart hammering with excitement. Hours later, he got off the ship in New York and hailed a yellow cab, just like in the movies. When the recent African immigration driving the taxi asked where he'd like to go, Uday said, "Anyway, man, just drive me around. I want to see everything." A few months later, the ship came to New York City again, and this time Uday disembarked for good. His contract was up from the cruise line, and he wanted to live in America now. He ended up in a suburban New Jersey, of all places, living for a while with an Indonesian man he'd met on the ship, who got a job in a sandwich shop at the mall. Again, 10 to 12 hours a day of immigrant-style labour. This time, working with Mexicans, not Filipinos. He learned better Spanish those first few months than English. In his rare moments of free time, Uday would ride the bus into Manhattan and just wander the streets, still so speechlessly infatuated with the city. A town he described today as the place which is the most full of love in the entire world. Somehow, again, that smile. He met up in New York City with a crowd of young musicians from all over the world, and he took to playing guitar with them, jamming all night with talented kids from Jamaica, Africa, France, Japan, and at one of those gigs he met Anne, a pretty blonde from Connecticut who played bass. They fell in love, they got married, they found an apartment in Brooklyn, they were surrounded by groovy friends who all went on road trips together down to the Florida Keys. Life was just so unbelievably happy. His English was quickly impeccable. He was thinking about going to college. On September 11, Uday watched the towers fall from the rooftops in Brooklyn. Like everyone else, he was paralysed with grief at what had happened. How could somebody inflict such an appalling atrocity on the city that is the most full of love of anywhere in the world? I don't know how much attention Uday was paying when the US Congress subsequently passed the Patriot Act in response to the terrorist threat, legislation which included draconian new immigrant laws, many of which were directed against Islamic nations such as Indonesia. One of these provisions demanded that all Indonesian citizens living in America register with the Department of Homeland Security. The telephone started ringing, and as Uday and his young Indonesian immigrant friends tried to figure out what to do, many of them had overstayed their visas and were afraid that registering would get them deported. On the other hand, they were afraid if they didn't register, thereby behaving like criminals, presumably fundamentalist Islamic terrorists roaming around America, ignored this registration law. But Uday decided that he did want to register. He was married to an American and he wanted to update his immigration status and become a legal citizen. He didn't want to live in hiding. He and Anne consulted all kinds of lawyers, but nobody knew how to advise them. Before 9/11, there would have been no problems. Uday, now married, could just go to the immigration office, update his visa situation and begin the process of gaining citizenship. But now, who knew? The laws hadn't been tested yet, said the immigration lawyers. The laws will be tested on you. So Uday and his wife had a meeting with a nice immigration official and shared their story. The couple were told that Uday was to come back later that same afternoon for a second interview. They should have been wary then. Uday was strictly instructed to return without his wife, without a lawyer, and carrying nothing in his pockets. Hoping for the best, he did return alone, empty-handed. In the second interview, that's when they arrested him. They took him to the detention centre in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where he stayed for weeks amongst vast crowds of immigrants, all of whom had recently been arrested under Homeland Security Act, many of whom had been living and working in America for years, most of whom didn't speak English. Some had been unable to contact their families upon their arrest. They were invisible in the detention centre. Nobody knew they existed anymore. It took a near hysterical Anne to find out where her husband had been taken to. What Uday remembers most about the detention centre was that a dozen coal, black, thin and terrified Nigerian men who had been found on a freight ship inside a steel shipping crate. They had been hiding in that container at the bottom of the ship for almost a month before they were discovered, trying to get to America or anywhere. They had no idea now where they were. Their eyes were so wide. Uday said it looked like they were still being blinded with spotlights. After a period of detention in the US government sent my Christian friend Uday, now an Islamic terrorist suspect, apparently back to Indonesia. This was the last year. I don't know if he's ever going to be allowed anywhere near America again. He and his wife are still trying to figure out what to do with their lives now. Their dreams hadn't called for living out their lives in Indonesia. Unable to cope with Jakarta's slums after having lived in the first world, Uday came to Bali to see if he could make a living here. Although he's having trouble being accepted in this society because he isn't Balinese, he's from Java, and the Balinese don't like the Javanese one bit, thinking of them as all thieves and beggars. So Uday encounters more prejudice here, in his own nation of Indonesia, than he ever did back in New York. He doesn't know what to do next. Maybe his wife Anne will come and join him here. Then again, maybe not. What is here for her? Their young marriage, conducted now entirely by email, is on the rocks. He's so out of place here, so disorientated. He's more of an American than anything else. Uday and I had the same slang. We'd walked We talked about our favourite restaurants in New York and we liked the same movies. He comes over to my house in the evenings and I get him beers and he plays the most amazing songs on his guitar. I wish he was famous. If there was any fairness, he would be famous by now. He says, dude, why is life all crazy like this? 84. Ketut and his life are all crazy like this. I asked my medicine man the next day. He replied, Buta ia dwaya ia. What does that mean? Man is a demon, man is a god, both true. This was familiar ID to me. It's very Indian and very yogic. The notion that human beings are born, as my guru has explained many times, the equivalent potential for both contraction and expansion. The ingredients of both darkness and light are equally present in all of us, and then it's up to the individual or the family or society to decide in what should be brought forth, the virtues or the malevolence. The madness of this planet is largely a result of the human being's difficulty in coming into various balance with himself, lunacy, both collective and individual results. So what can we do about this craziness of the world? Nothing, Ketut laughed, but with a dose of kindness. This is nature of the world. This is destiny. Worry about your craziness only. Make you in peace. But how should we find peace within ourselves? I asked Ketut. Meditation, he said. Purpose of meditation is only happiness and peace. Very easy. Today I will teach you new meditation, make you even better person. It's called Four Brothers Meditation. Ketut went on to explain that the Balinese believe that we each accompanied at birth by four invisible brothers who come into the world with us and protect us throughout our lives. When the child is in the womb, her four siblings are even there with her. They are represented by the placenta, the amniotic fluid, the umbilical cord, and the yellow waxy substance that protects an unborn baby's skin. When the baby is born, her parents collect as much of these extra birthing materials as possible, placing them in a coconut shell and burying them by the front door of the family house. According to the Balinese, this buried coconut is a holy resting place for the four unborn brothers, and the spot they tended to forever, like a shrine. The child is taught from the earliest consciousness that these four brothers are with her in the world wherever she goes, and that they will always look after her. The brothers inhabit the four virtues a person needs to be safe, happy in life: intelligence, friendship, strength, and I love this one, poetry. The brothers can be called upon in any critical situation for rescue and assistance. When you die, your fourth spirit brothers collect your soul and bring you to heaven. Today, Ketut told me that he's never taught any Westerner the Four Brothers meditation yet, but he thinks I'm ready for it. First, he taught me the names of my invisible siblings: Anglo-Piath, Margio-Piath, Banas-Piath, and Banas-Piath Ragio. He instructed me to memorize these names and ask for the help of my brothers throughout my life. Whenever I need them, he says I don't have to be formal when I speak to them, the way we are formal when we pray to God. I am allowed to speak to my brothers with familiar affection because it's just your family. He tells me to say their names as I am washing myself in the morning, and they will join me. Say their names again every time before you eat, and I will include my brothers in the enjoyment of the meal. Call them before you sleep, saying, I am sleeping now, so you must stay awake and protect me, and my brothers will shield me through the night. Stop demons and nightmares. That's good, I told him, because I have a problem sometimes with nightmares. What nightmares? I explained to the medicine man that I've been having the same horrible nightmares since childhood. Namely, there is a man with a knife standing next to my bed. This nightmare is so vivid, the man is so real, that sometimes it makes me scream out in fear. It leaves my heart pounding every time, and has never been fun for those who share my bed either. I've been having this nightmare every few weeks for as long as I can remember. I told this kid to to Katut, and he told me, I have been misunderstanding the visions for years. The man with a knife in my bedroom is not an enemy. He is just one of my 4 brothers. He is a spirit brother who represents strength. He is not there to attack me, but to guard me while I'm asleep. I'm probably waking up because I'm sensing the commotion of my spirit brother fighting away some demon who has been trying to hurt me. It is not it's not a knife my brother is carrying. It is a kris, a small, powerful dagger. I don't have to be afraid. I can go back to sleep knowing I am protected. You lucky, Katut said. Lucky you can see them. Sometimes I see my brothers in meditation, but very rare. For a regular person to see this, I think you have big spiritual power. I hope maybe someday you become medicine woman. Okay, I said, laughing, but only if I can have my own TV series. He laughed with me, not getting the joke, of course, but loving the idea that people make jokes. Ketut then instructed me that whenever I speak to my 4 brothers, I must tell them who I am so that they can recognise me. I must use my secret nickname they have for me. I must say I am Laho Prano. Laho Prano means happy body. I rode my bicycle back home, pushing my happy body up the hills towards my house in the afternoon sun. On my way through the forest, a big male monkey dropped out of the tree right in front of me, bared his fangs at me. I didn't even flinch. I said, "Back off, Jack. I got 4 brothers protecting my ass," and I just rode on by him. 85. Although the next day, protective brothers notwithstanding, I did get hit by a bus. It was sort of a smallish bush, but nevertheless it did knock me off my bicycle and I was cruising down the shoulderless road. I got tossed into a cement irrigation ditch. About 30 Balinese people on motorcycles stopped to help me, having witnessed the accident. The bus was long gone, and everybody invited me to their house for tea and offered to drive me to hospital. They felt so bad about the whole incident. It wasn't that serious a wreck, though, considering what might have been. My bicycle was fine, although the basket was bent and my helmet was cracked. Better the helmet than the head in such cases. The worst of the damage was deep cut on my knee, full of bits of pebbles and dirt that proceeded. Over the next few days, the moist tropical air, it became nastily infected. I didn't want to worry him, but a few days later I finally rolled up my pants on my legs of Katutle's porch, peeled off the yellowing bandage and showed him my wound, and the old medicine man, he peered at my attic concerned. "Infect," he diagnosed. "Painful." "Yes," I said. "You should go see doctor." This was a little surprising. Wasn't he the doctor? But for some reason he didn't volunteer to help me, and I didn't push it. Maybe he doesn't administer medication to Westerners, or maybe Katotis just had a secret hidden master plan, because it was bandaged up to the knee that that allowed me, in the end, to meet Wayan, and from the meeting, everything that was meant to happen, happened. 86. Wayan Nurishashi is, like Tutlea, a Balinese healer. There are some differences between them though. He's elderly, a male. She is a woman in her late 30s. He's more of a priestly figure, somewhat more mystical, while Wayan is a hands-on doctor mixing herbs and medications in her own shop and taking care of patients right there on the premises. Wayan has a little storefront shop in the centre of Ubud called a Traditional Balinese Healing Centre. I'd ridden my bike past it many times on the way down to Katut, noticing it because all of the potted plants outside the place, and because of the blackboard with the curious handwritten advertising in it, multivitamin lunch special. But I never gone into the place before. My knee got messed up. After Katut sent me to find a doctor, though I remembered the shop and came by on my bicycle hoping somebody might be there to help me deal with the infection. Wayan's place is a very small medical clinic and a home and a restaurant all at the same time. Downstairs is a tiny kitchen and a modest public eating area with 3 tables and a few chairs. Upstairs there's a private area. Wayan gives massages and treatments. There's one dark room in the back. I limped into the shop with my sore knee and introduced myself to Wayan, the healer. A strikingly attractive Balinese woman with a wide smile and shiny black hair down to her waist. There were 2 shy young girls hiding behind her in the kitchen who smiled when I waved at them. They ducked away again. I showed Wyan my infected wound and asked if she could help. Soon, Wyan had water and herbs boiling on the stove and was making me a drink, jamu, a traditional Indonesian homemade medicine concoctions. She had placed hot green leaves on my knee and started to feel better immediately. We got talking. Her English was excellent because she is Balinese. She immediately asked me 3 standard introduction questions. Where are you going today? Where are you coming from? Are you married? When I told her I was not married, not yet, she looked taken aback. Never been married? She asked. No, I lied. I don't like lying, but I generally have found it's not easy. It's easier not to mention my divorce to Balinese because they get so upset about it. Really? Never been married? She asked me again, and she was looking at me with great curiosity now. Honestly, I lied. Never been married. You sure? This was getting weird. I'm totally sure. Not even once? She asked. Okay, so she could see through me. Well, I confess, there was one time. And her face cleared like, yes, I thought as much, she asked. Divorced? Yes, I said, ashamed now. Divorced. I could tell you are divorced. It's not very common here, is it? But me too, said Wyan, entirely to my surprise. Me too, divorced? You? I did everything I could, she said. I've tried everything before I got divorced, praying every day, but I had to go away from him. Her eyes filled up with tears. And next thing you know, I was holding Wyan's hand, having just met my first Balinese divorcee, and I was saying, I'm sure you did the best you could, sweetie. I'm sure you tried everything. Divorce is too sad, she said. I agree. I stayed there in wine shop for the next 5 hours, talking with my new best friend about her troubles. She cleaned up the infection in my knee as I listened to her story. Wyan's Balinese husband, she told me, was a man who'd drink all the time, always gamble, lose all money, then beat me when I don't give him more money to gamble and drink, she said. He beat me into hospital many times. She parted her hair, showed me her scars on her head and said, this is from when he hit me with motorcycle helmet. Always he was hitting me with his motorcycle helmet when he is drinking, when I don't make money. He hit me so much I got unconscious, dizzy, can't see. I think it is lucky I am a healer. My family are healers because I know how to heal myself after he beats me. I think if I were not a healer, I would lose my ears, not be able to hear things anymore. Or maybe lose my eye, not be able to see. She left him. She told him, after he'd beat her so severely, that I lose my baby, my second child, the one in the belly, after which incident their firstborn child, a bright girl with a nickname of Tutty, said, I think you should get divorced, Mummy. Every time you go to hospital you leave too much work around the house for Tutty. Tutty was 4 years old when she said this. To exit a marriage in Bali leaves a person alone and unprotected in ways that are almost impossible for Westerners to imagine. The Balinese family unit, enclosed within the walls of a family compound, is merely everything. 4 generations of siblings, cousins, parents, grandparents and children, all living together in a series of small bungalows surrounding the family temple, taking care of each other from birth to death. The family compound is the source of strength, financial security, health care, daycare, education, and most important to the Balinese, spiritual connection. The family compound is so vital that the Balinese think of it as a single living person. The population of Balinese village is traditionally encountered not by number of individuals, by the number of compounds. The compound is self-sustaining universe, so you don't leave it. Unless, of course, you are a woman, in which case you move only once, out of your father's family compound into your husband's. When this system works, which it does in this healthy society almost all the time, it produces the most sane, protected, calm, happy, balanced human beings in the world. But when it doesn't work, as with my new friend Wyan, the outcasts are lost in the airless orbit. Her choice was either to stay with a family compound safety net with a husband who kept putting her in hospital, or to save her own life and leave, which left her with nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. Actually, she did take her encyclopedic knowledge of healing, her goodness, her work ethic, and her daughter Tutty, whom she had to fight hard to keep. Bali is patriarchy to the end, is a rare case of divorce. The children automatically belong to the father. To get Tutty back, Wyan had to hire a lawyer whom she paid with every single thing she had. I mean everything. She sold off not only her furniture, her jewellery, but also her forks and spoons, her socks and shoes, her old washed clothes, her half-burnt candles. Everything went to pay the lawyer. But she did get her daughter back in the end after a 2-year battle. Wyan is just lucky Tutty was a girl. If she'd been a boy, Wyan would never have seen the kid again. Boys are much more valuable. For the last few years now, Wyan and Tutty have been living on their own, all alone in a beehive of Bali, moving from place to place every few months as money comes and goes, always sleepless with worry about where to go next, which has been difficult because every time she moves, her patients, mostly Balinese, whom all of them on hard times themselves these days, have trouble finding her again. Also, with every move, little Tutty has to be pulled out of her school. Tutty was always first in a class before, but now has slipped since the last move, down to the 20th out of 50 children. In the middle of Wyan's telling me this story, Tutty herself came charging into the shop, having arrived home from school. She's 8 years old now, and a mighty exhibition of charisma and fireworks. This little cherry bomb of a girl, pigtailed, skinny and excited, asked me in a lively English if I'd like to eat lunch, and Wyan said, "I forget you should have lunch." And the mother and daughter rushed to the kitchen and, with the help of the 2 shy girls hiding back there, produced some time later the best food I'd tasted in Bali. Little Tutty brought out each course of the meal with bright-voiced explanation of what the plate was, wearing a huge grin, generally just being totally peppy, so she should have been spinning a baton. Turmeric juice to keep clean the kidneys, she announced. Seaweed for calcium, tomato salad for vitamin D. Mix herbs for not getting malaria. I finally said, "Tutty, where did you learn to speak such good English?" "From a book," she proclaimed. "I think you a very clever girl," I informed her. "Thank you," she said, as she did a spontaneous, happy little dance. "You are a very clever girl too." Balinese kids aren't normally like this, by the way. They're usually all quiet and polite, hiding behind their mother's skirts. Not Tutty. She was all showbiz. She was all show and tell. "I will see you my books," Tutty sang, and hurled upstairs to get them. She wants to be an animal doctor, Wayne told me. What is the word in English? Veterinarian. Yes, veterinarian. But she has so many questions about animals, I don't know how to answer her. She says, "Mummy, if somebody brings me a sick tiger, how do I bandage its teeth first so it doesn't bite me? If a snake gets sick, how do I... If a snake gets sick and needs medicine, where is the opening? I don't know where she gets these ideas. I hope she can go to university." Tutty careened down the stairs, arms full of books, zinged herself into her mother's lap. Wayne laughed and kissed her daughter. All the sadness about the divorce suddenly gone from her face. I watched them, thinking that this little girl who had made their mothers' lives grow up to be such powerful women. Already in the space of one afternoon, I was so in love with this kid. I sent up a spontaneous prayer to God, "May Tutty no Shihasha someday bandage the teeth of thousands of white tigers." I love Tutty's mother too. But I've been in their shop now for hours and I felt I should leave. Some other tourists had wandered into the place and were hoping to be served lunch. One of the tourists, a brassy older broad from Australian, was loudly asking Wyan, could she please help cure her god-awful constipation. I was thinking, sing it a little louder, honey, and we can all dance to it. "I will come back tomorrow, I promise Wyan, and I'll order the multivitamin lunch special again." "Your knee is better now," Wyan said, quickly better. No infection anymore. She wiped the last of the green herbal goo off my leg, sort of jiggled my kneecap around for a bit, feeling for something. Then she felt the other knee, closing her eyes. She opened her eyes, grinned and said, "I can tell by your knees you don't have much sex lately." I said, "Why? Because they're so close together." She laughed. "No, it is the cartilage, very dry. Hormones from sex lubricates the joints. How long since sex for you?" about a year and a half. You need a good man. I will find one for you. I will pray at the temple for a good man for you, because now you are my sister also. If you come back tomorrow, I will clean your kidneys for you. A good man and clean kidneys too. That sounds like a great deal. I'll never tell anybody these things before about my divorce, she told me. But my life is heavy, too much sad, too much hard. I don't understand why life's so hard. Then I did a strange thing. I took both the healer's hands in mine and said, with the most powerful conviction, the hardest part of your life is behind you now, Wayan. I left the shop, then, trembling unaccountably, all jammed up with some potent intuition or impulse that I could not yet identify or release.